Here is one of a series of talks by spiritual leader Lola McDowell Lee, spanning 2 decades from the early 70s through the 90s. Lola was a Zen Roshi, whose Rinzai lineage included Dr. Henry Plutov and renowned Zen master Shigetsu Sasaki. Lola was a religious scholar as well as an ordained Christian minister. While the talks are focused mainly on Zen and Buddhism, Lola drew on many spiritual traditions, including those of Jesus, Plato, Lao Tzu, the Hindu Vedas, Meister Eckhart, and Gurdjieff.
When Lin-Li was nearly 100, he put on his fur coat in the middle of spring and went to pick the grains dropped by the reapers, singing as he made his way through the fields. Confucius, who was on a journey to Wei, saw him in the distance. Turning to his disciples, he said, "That old man should be worth talking to. Someone should go and find out what he has to say." So this man called Zhu Kong asked to be the one to go. And he met Lin-Li at the end of the embankments, and looking him straight in the face, not polite or anything, he just looked at him and he says, "Don't you ever feel any regret? You pick up the grains singing as you go. Don't you ever feel any regret?" Lin-Li neither halted his steps nor paused in his song. Zhu Kong went on pressing him until finally he looked up, this Lin-Li, and answered, "What have I to regret? A child, you never learned how to behave. As man, you never strove to make your mark. No wife nor son in your old age, and the time of your death is near. What have I to regret?" And so this Zhu Kong goes on and says, "Well, Master, what happiness have you had that you should sing as you walk, picking up the grains?" And he answers him again, "The reasons for my happiness all men share," said Lin-Li, and he smiled. "But instead, they worry over them. It is because I took no pains learning to behave when I was young, and never strove to make my mark when I grew up, that I have been able to live so long. It is because I have no wife and sons in my old age, and the time of my death is near, that I can be happy. But it's human to want long life and hate death. Why should you be so happy to die? Death is a return to where we set out from when we were born. So how do I know that when I die here, I shall not be born somewhere else? How do I know? How do I know that life and death are not as good as each other? How do I know? How do I know that it is not a delusion to crave anxiously for life? How do I know? How do I know that present death would not be better than past life? How do I know? And Zhu Kong listened, but he didn't understand his meaning. So he went back and he told Confucius. And Confucius said, "I knew he would be worth talking to, and so he is." He is a man who has found it. We don't very often think in this way. How do I know? How do I know? We know. How do you know? What we call life is a term for something that is unseen. Life is not seen. We exist, and you can look within yourself and you can perceive this life, but ordinarily we don't. So then, of course, we try to understand it with the mind. And as I said last week, I guess it was, the week before, that which is understood by the thinking is the limited is of the boundless is not. This unseeable, that surrounds us, this unhearable that sustains us, and this untouchable in which we move and speak. It's much larger than you can ever imagine. And when we ponder about it, we come to realize that life, in its immeasurability, must be known in a way other than through the mentalizing or through the senses. It is through the mentalizing and through the senses that this is not becomes is. It is that by which the immeasurable becomes limited. And in this limited world, we know things by inference. If this is so, then that must be so also. Therefore, we know it, we say. Yeah. Instead of knowing directly, we know by inference. And we forget that in this knowing by inference, surely something remains unknown. We forget. Surely, we are not so egotistical as to think that through thinking, through mentalizing, and through the senses, that we know it all. So what is this unknown? Look, it surrounds you. You're sitting in it. You're sitting in it. You see it with the senses, and you don't feel it with the hands. The hands, it goes right through it. But what are you sitting in? And for God's sakes, don't call it space. What are you sitting in? Something quite unseen. Yeah. What about this unknown that's closer than hands and feet too, And we go around trying to make this unknown known. And this human state, man, in trying to make the unknown known, does some very peculiar things. It tries to picture an unknown. It uses the imagination. Has an inferences, and then has an inference, and then imagines further, and uses concepts to make a picture of this unknown. And so it begins to think, well, I have this picture. Now I know is what we say. We don't say I have a picture. And in so doing, why we begin to think of it, this unknown, as something very desirous, or something not desirous, something that's inimical. Sometimes we do both. That's how clever we are. We in the Western world have a picture of God as a person. He looks something like Jesus. How will you think Jesus looks like? We don't know what Jesus looked like either, but, he looks something like Jesus, only he's older and he's wiser, because he's the Father, after all. He's the Father of Jesus, so he's got to be older and he's got to be wiser, so he's got white hair and a long beard. Strange, isn't it? How we've come up with that. If there is no time in the eternal, it is called ever after all, it is called the timeless. It is eternal time. No time moving in it at all. It's strange to me that if there is no time, that God should have become an old man. Especially, we read in the Bible that Jesus said, except ye become as little children, ye shall in no wise enter the kingdom. And then he said in another place, suffer the little children to come unto me, for of such is the kingdom of heaven. Well, if the kingdom of heaven is full of little kids and they don't grow anymore, where'd this old man come from? That's what we've done, huh? It would be better if we would set aside all these inferences and pictures about things that we don't know anything about. It may be very difficult, to set aside the inferences, and try to find out what the life is. How do you even begin? How does one approach the unknowable? It is unknowable, but it's not unknown. And let us remember also, it is a matter of life and death. And there are those, who step out of society's mold and say, yes, I want to know. I really want to know. The idea of being a knower attracts them. Yeah. It intrigues them. And so they dabble, a little bit, and they stand on their tippy toes and, come pretty close to the water. They don't jump in, they just might get wet, but they jumping around on their tippy toes near it. And then they say all of a sudden, wait, I have to think about this. See? What's there to think about? It's like as if one were going to say, well, wait, first I have to know about love, and then I will fall in love. How are you going to know anything about love if you don't fall in love? It's the only way you're going to find out anything about it. We very easily deceive ourselves. Nobody's deceiving you. You deceive yourself, huh? Our own inferences about things deceive us. But, once in a while, you sit down and be with yourself. And you look at them. And you set them aside. And when you've set aside all the inferences, what's left? Well, you can look at your breathing. And look at what you call within. Then you sit there, just you and all your little secrets. Just you and the biggest secret in the world. And if you look directly, it's no secret at all. Yeah. I wonder why we get so hung up in the barriers. You should be agile and jump over them. The Chinese speak, as we all know, of the Tao, which is called the pathless path, or the way of no way. Or you can call it God, or you can call it Buddha nature. The Tao is rather like Nagarjuna's void, his shunyata, or the Buddha's middle way. This middle way, just briefly in passing, is very important. Now, this Lin-Li was a Taoist master, and he didn't think of himself as being anything extraordinary. He didn't claim anything. They don't, you know. They're not special in their own eyes. Their living is quite ordinary, if life can be called ordinary. Yeah. So, you know, non-egoistic. They have, we could say, returned to nature, except let's put returned in quotes because we, of course, don't leave nature ever, ever. But they have set aside this ego I for something more. And this Lin-Li, you know, very simple man, very old man, picking grains dropped by the reapers, very lowly job. It's a beggar's way of living, you know. But he's just going about his business of getting something to eat. He's not waiting for a particular moment. He's not waiting for a special situation in which he's going to be happy. He is content. He is at peace. So he's happy in being. He is happy in being. It doesn't take a special occasion, you know, that happens now and then doesn't happen. Happy is the stuff that existence is made of. And as a Taoist, he has fallen in harmony with existence. And quite naturally, he's happy. Yeah. Sometimes we call it spontaneous. He acts out of himself, out of being. The conditioning has been unconditioned. And whatever he does happily. And it isn't the act that he does that gives him happiness or that makes his happiness. The happiness comes first, before any act or before any effort. You know, it's like a child with a great deal of energy. You know, the energy first, and then the running around and the screaming, which they've got to do in order to use up some of this energy. So, happiness first, and then comes the act. As we generally know it, happiness is caused by something from out there. A person cares, there is a gift given, and the person caring is a gift, you know. And then that person leaves, and the gift is taken away. We're miserable. All the happiness went, you know. It's given by others, and so you allow it to be taken away by others. It's given by circumstances and taken away by circumstances. It's a happiness that depends on someone other than yourself. And yet, happiness is part of your nature. Why do you wait for someone to come and bring it forth? Can't you do it for yourself? Let it bubble in here, you know. Bubbles like champagne. Now, ordinarily, a man that's about 100 years old isn't able to sing very much. You know, after all, what's there to sing about now? Life is slipping away. His life is disappearing. It's oozed away, and he's almost dry as a bone, as they say. What is there now to be happy for? Death is coming. But here he is singing, and he's celebrating. For what? You know, a man of 100 hasn't got very much future. You know, his life is mostly spent. You know, for what reason can a man like that sing as he goes along? For whom? And then at such an age, to have to go out and do such a beggarly job as picking grains off the ground so that he'd have something to eat, which means that nobody is around to look after this old man. See? He's alone. What has he got to sing about? See? Especially in the Chinese tradition, you know, where they have, prior to the time now, they've always wanted lots of children so that there'll be somebody around to take care of you in your old age. And of course, you have lots of children so that they will pray for the ancestors. Well, that's in there too. And here's this man all alone. Why should he sing? According to his society, he's got nothing. But if you have a song in you, you know, a real song, you know, it's a song that rises from within this inner core. What does it matter? Your body can be killed, but not your song. That song is eternal, this bubbling in us, because it has no cause. See? It doesn't need somebody out there. It has no cause. It just bubbles up. It flows. That which is caused is not eternal. That which is caused is here, in time, in phenomena. When the cause disappears, then the song disappears. You know, we can see then it's only a byproduct, no matter how enjoyable it's been. But that which is uncaused, that will go on forever, because there is nothing that can destroy it. The body will die because it's been caused. After all, when your mother and father met, they caused your body. You know? Comes a time, because it has a cause, when it will be finished. One day we will just simply disappear. But is that all? Is there not something more? Well, we like to think that there is, Sure. And so we've made up a whole lot of things, these inferences. Yeah. But if you will look, really look into yourself and hold yourself very steady, you will see that there is something present. There is something present. And that something was there before you were born. And it will be present when you leave this scene. After death, you know, that which was before your birth still is, because it is uncaused. It is unborn. It is unconditioned. It is an unborn. It is an unconditioned what? What is it? It's knowable. It's unknown. It is an unknown knowable, or an unknowable known. What is it? Now, this Tung Tu Kung, he goes forth, he's going to talk with this Lin-Li, and he asks him, don't you ever feel any regrets? Now, to a disciple of Confucius, and to most people, this man certainly, this Lin-Li, has certainly got nothing to be happy about. If he were crying by the side of the road, that would be logical. But singing, that's illogical. Now, it is the illogical understanding that unveils the happiness. Illogical understanding is a knot sitting in the middle of a little box. Now, in the Confucian approach to life, truth is something that you have to learn. If you learn your lessons well, you will know what truth is. But the Taoists, they're on the other side of the fence. They say that truth has to be lived to know it and not learned. See, that truth is to be experienced. To have the truth, we have to go through an unlearning. You have to wash the mind clean. To drop all the nonsense that we've been carrying. And it is surprising how much nonsense we have carried. Still carried. And see, and then we have gone along thinking as if we know. And this, as if we know, is a problem. If someone asks you, do you know God? Well, there are a great many people who would say, yes, of course we do. We go to church every Sunday. God is present. We know him well. Yeah? I wonder if they ever really thought about what they're saying. Do you really know? What do you really know? What do you really know? We pretend about so many things, and we are hiding under this pretense. And whom are you deceiving? There was a very tough guy once who sauntered into this very dimly lit saloon. And he stood there for a minute trying to adjust to seeing in there, and then he yelled out, is there anybody here called Donovan? He snarls, Brown. Nobody answered. So once more he snarled, is there anybody here called Donovan? And there was this moment of silence, and then this little guy strolled forward, and he said, I'm Donovan. So this tough guy picked him up and threw him across the bar. And then he went over to him, and he hit him, and he slapped him. He punched him in the jaw, and left him there on the bar and stalked out. And about 15 minutes later, this little guy came to, and he says, boy, did I fool him. I ain't Donovan. That's what we do. Exactly what we do. Whom are you fooling? Whom are you deceiving? Now, if you are seeking to know the truth, if you really want to know, if you are truly seeking, one of the first things you got to do is check out yourself. What do you know, and what are you pretending to know? What do you know directly? Or is this too an inference? What do you know? Really? Do you know what love is? Well, everybody here can say yes, I think. Do you know what life is? Do you know what you are? And, we question ourselves. Sit down and, talk to yourself a little bit. It's not so bad. And little by little, it becomes clear that although it may be ego-shattering to look at this, to suddenly realize, I don't know. And it is not a crime to say, I don't know. Better that than deceiving yourself. I don't know. You can be happy in I don't know, but you cannot be happy in deceiving. No. And if you go to India and you ask the people walking around there, do you know what God is? They're very apt to say, well, yes, of course, we know God, we know Brahman. Sure, and there's Krishna. We know. If you go to Russia and ask, do you know what God is? God? There isn't anything like God. No, of course we don't know God. What's there to know? See? Both know. One knows there is and one knows there is not. See? Both know, and that's the problem. They do not realize they do not know. See? The theist and the atheist are not opposites. They are not enemies. They're partners in the same game. Both are pretending that they know. And that's a big problem. We have this big problem. So, it behooves us to keep after ourselves with this, do not deceive yourself. What do you really know? Is this an inference, or do I really know? Now, a Taoist man, a man of real understanding, he will not pretend that he knows. Then there is the possibility that someday he may know. But if you begin with knowing, you already know this, then you have a barrier. And it is of your own creation, as of course all your barriers are. Yeah. Now, this man, Tzu Kung, is pestering Lin-Li out there. He's singing and picking up his little grains. And Lin-Li, of course, doesn't answer him right away. But he didn't halt in his steps, nor did he pause in his song. But this disciple just kept pressing him until finally Lin-Li looked up and said, what have I to regret? See, don't you have any regrets? Or what have I to regret? See, the questions come out differently at times. But this inquiry, if it's a very deep inquiry, it has a name. So we call it the eternal quest. It's a real inquiry. You really want to know. It's not just a whim. You're ready to move into what is presented. Whatever is presented, that's what you move into. And you're ready to pay for it. Because one way or the other, one pays. And you pay with your life, one way or the other. Either you save your life, using it for whims and fancies, or you lose it, then you lose it. Or you give up your life and you have it. Either you have a goal of knowing and moving to it, or no goal at all. Either way, you pay. And the payment in both cases is your life. See? Why not pay for the pearl of the great price instead of just entertainment? When it comes down to that's what you've used your life on. whichever. So anyway, this Lin-Li, he ignores this young man. He knows that this young man is not a man of inquiry. He's just cruising along. He's curious. Yeah? Or else he wouldn't have come at this Taoist master as he did. You know, he kind of jumped at him and he stared him in the face and, you know. He would have waited for the proper moment. You know, one waits for a master. You know, he would sit by the side of the road and wait. And in Taoist circles, this is the accepted norm. This is what you do. You wait until the master asks, "For what reason have you come?" Or like Henry snarled at me, "What do you want of me?" I don't want anything. So first of all, this disciple didn't make the proper approach, which he should have known better than, because he was a disciple of Confucius. And Confucius was very strict with his learning. And then, of course, these foolish questions. And he didn't ask him once, he asked him 3 times, "Why are you happy?" Well, the why is meaningless. If somebody's miserable, you can ask, "Why are you so miserable?" If somebody is sick, you can ask, "Why are you ill?" The question is relevant. It means something to the situation. But if somebody's healthy, you don't ask, "Why are you healthy?" Do you ever hear anybody ask anybody, "Why are you healthy?" No. Health is as it should be. Right? See, happiness is as it should be. If somebody goes crazy, you can ask the cause, you know, "Why has he become crazy?" But you don't ask, "Why are you sane?" No. So, why are you happy? See, you look at the switch in this thing. When Tu Kung asks, "Don't you have any regrets?" What have I to regret? There's a switch now. What have you got to be happy about? Lin-Li answers, "What have I got to be unhappy about?" It's a 180-degree turn. Look at it from a different place. You try it someday. On yourself, of course. Yeah. You know, the story goes about this very famous doctor. He was a surgeon, and he was internationally known. And when he retired, all of his disciples from all over the world gathered to celebrate. It was a big event. And they found him looking, a little sad. And so one of his disciples asked him, "What is the problem, sir? You have lived a very successful life. Nobody can compete with you. You are unique in your field, and you have everything to be happy about. You've got it made." And he answered, he says, "Seeing all this success, I'm feeling sad because I never wanted to be a doctor. I wanted to be a dancer." Yeah, See, my whole life has been thrown away. It doesn't satisfy. So, he learned to be in a mold. He learned to behave. And deep down within himself, he failed himself. Yeah. Now, this old man, Lin-Li, wasn't interested in proving that he was somebody. He didn't want to become part of history. He believed in such things as the moon print in the water, or the bird's tracks in the air, the sky. Which is just the opposite of how we usually look at things. And there's a very modern story about a very old parable told about Moses when he was leading the people out of Egypt. And they came to this sea. Impossible to cross. Here's all this water. Here's these King's armies behind him. What are you going to do? So he turned and he looked at his press agent. Remember, this is a modern story. And he said, and now tell me what you think. What do you say? I have an idea and I want your opinion about it. I can ask the ocean, or I can ask God to make way for us, and the ocean will separate and we can walk through. And this press agent looked at him and said, if you can do that, I promise you 2 pages in the Old Testament. Terrible, huh? Oh, dear. And this old man, he says, I'm all alone. I'm alone. My solitude is unperturbed. Alone, free. Absolutely my own master. No one to drag me here and there. I am alone. And of course, most of humanity mixes up these 2 words of alone and lonely. Lonely is missing the other. Well, all I can say about that is learn to be your own company. Just yourself. It's quite entertaining. Indeed. Aloneness is a kind of a solitude. And aloneness is beautiful. It has a kind of a luminosity about it. This alone. Buddha is alone. Lei Tzu is alone. Chuang Tzu is alone. Lao Tzu is alone. And this old man Lin-Li is alone. Not lonely. Not seeking some company. Not thinking, well, where am I going to go today? And what am I going to do today? How am I going to be occupied today? Which we do, we occupy ourselves so we can forget ourselves. You have not yet fallen in love with yourself. And I don't mean the ego. I mean this no self or true self. Fall in love with it. Here's this little bride. This form of nature. The body and the psyche. This bride. Be it man or be it woman. This form of nature is the bride. And the bride waits for the bridegroom. Then he comes along. Oh, and the bride is so in love with him. Not the ego. The bride is so in love with him. And a wedding takes place. And the water is turned into wine. Now, it's an event that takes place in you. It is an event. It is not just something written for our puzzlement. It is to be experienced. You love yourself. You become the bride, waiting for the groom, and there is a wedding. And the water is turned into wine. Yeah. This quest, the great inquiry, what do I know? Who am I? This great adventure, and that's how you should look at it. You move into yourself as a great adventure. Your life will be tremendously enriched through yourself. You know, the Taoists have a religious maturity of such splendor, of a great depth and height. They have no image of God, no concept of God, but they're not what one would call godless. Existence is enough. Eternity, the immeasurable and limited, that this has always been so and will always be so. And once you come into contact with this eternal, we could call it breath, we could call it song within you, this eternal happiness, what is to regret? What is to be miserable about? You then are eternal and immortal, and there is no death now for you. You're birthless. Whatever the outer circumstances, that inner light burns, and that song continues. Okay? Now, for those of you who must leave, please, those of you who are going to stay, go to the next step. And now, may the peace and the power that passeth all understanding hold us and keep us in the love of the Christed consciousness while we are seemingly separate one from another. And I thank you very much.
If you find Lola's talks valuable, more will be posted in weeks to come.